fellow Falcoholics, welcome to another episode of the Falcoholic Live. I am your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter, here to bring you another Falcons contract breakdown. Today we're going to be taking a look at Julio Jones. His contract is the second largest on the roster behind Matt Ryan in terms of his cap hits and other things like that. It's been a pretty constant There's been a pretty constant stream of, oh, should the Falcons trade Julio? Should the Falcons cut Julio? What can they do with Julio? And that's natural after a year when, your star receiver who's making a ton of money is missing a lot of games, unfortunately, with injury. So we're going to break down that contract. We're going to talk about what his cap hits look like, how reasonable is it for him to be traded in 2021, 2022, and so on. And we're going to break it down. So, if you need a primer on the basics of NFL contracts before we get started, please check out my previous contract breakdown video, the Matt Ryan video. I'll put a card here for it. That will explain at the beginning of that video how contracts work. So if you need an immediate primer, check that out first before starting this video. But without further ado, guys, we're going to jump right into taking a look at the basics of Julio Jones' contract for the Falcons. So, Julio Jones, basics of his contract. So, at its heart, this is a 3-year, $66 million extension that Julio signed in 2019. The new years of the contract will actually start taking effect now in 2021 and will take Julio through 2023 with the team. This deal is actually quite a bit simpler than Matt Ryan's. There's not as much signing bonus tied up. There's not as many weird roster bonuses and things of that nature. So it's a little bit simpler. But at its core, the contract has $43 million in new guarantees for Julio, not counting the guarantees from 2019 and 2020. And there's a $25 million signing bonus attached to it that he got already back in 2019. That is the crux of his guaranteed money over the length of this deal. In terms of his cap hits per year, you can see that the first year, 2019, was pretty reasonable at just $10.36 million. 2022, it accelerates quite a bit. That actually increased from its original number because the team was really cap strapped in 2019 and wanted to lower that hit with the extension. So in 2020, his cap hit went up to $20.4 million. The highest cap hit of the deal will be in 2021, where Julio carries a $23 million cap hit, actually making him, I believe, the second highest cap hit on the roster. 2022 and 2023 will have the same cap hit. It's $19.26 million, which is still extremely high for a wide receiver, and those will be his age 33 and 34 seasons, respectively. One thing to note with Julio's contract is after March 20th of 2021, $2 million of Julio's 2022 base salary becomes guaranteed. Now, that's not a ton of money. That's not really something to worry about, but we should keep that in mind when making these calculations, because I don't believe over the cap's numbers reflect that money. I'm not exactly sure how that would change his cap hits. It wouldn't change his cap hits, but it might change the amount the Falcons could save by cutting him specifically in 2022 or 2023. So that's something to keep in mind. Not something I'm really going to touch on too much in this video, but something to keep in mind going forward. So now that we've got the basics down, let's take a look at some scenarios that the Falcons can try with Julio going forward in 2021, 2022, and 2023. So now we're going to take a look at some possible scenarios for Julio Jones, starting with the 2021 season, which is the one everyone's asking about because we're about to go into this offseason right now. The basics are that we can't really do anything with Julio Jones in 2021. It's going to be very, very difficult to make that work. So the big thing to start with in 2021 is a straight up cut is absolutely not feasible in any way. That cut would carry $38.5 million in dead cap and cost the Falcons about $15.5 million in terms of a cap loss from that cut. Because when you cut a player straight up, you accelerate all remaining guarantees and signing bonus that's prorated and all that good stuff into this year. So that is absolutely not on the table. If the Falcons were to try a post-June 1st cut, it's still not feasible. It does reduce the dead cap to $23 million, but it does not provide any cap savings, so it doesn't really make any financial sense for the Falcons to make that sort of move when they're not getting anything out of it. Particularly if Julio Jones is playing at even a reasonable level, that wouldn't make any sense. So that's not going to happen either. If you look at a trade, because Julio's most of his guaranteed money is wrapped up in guaranteed salary this year, a trade is slightly more feasible. It would only carry a $23.25 million dead cap, but it still costs the Falcons about $200K in terms of a cap loss from that trade. However, if they were to make the trade post June 1st, say they get a Jamar Chase in the draft or something crazy like that, not advocating for that, I'm just saying, that would only cost them about $7.75 million in dead cap, and it would save them $15.3 million in terms of cap savings. The reason for that is, like I said, a lot of his guaranteed money remaining is based on that base salary. His entire base salary in 2021 is guaranteed. So the Falcons are still going to be on the hook for several years of that prorated signing bonus, but all of that $15 million in guaranteed salary from this year would get passed on to the next team. So it's slightly more feasible, but again, a trade for Julio Jones is unlikely at this point due to his age, due to all of that guaranteed money, and due to the fact that the Falcons are probably going to be asking for significant resources to move a player of Julio's caliber, and I just don't really see any teams being willing to throw that kind of draft compensation out there and take on a huge contract for a guy coming off an injury-plagued season. So I don't think Julio is going anywhere in 2021. The numbers here kind of bear that out, that that's not really a possibility. In 2022, things are a little bit more flexible. So a straight up cut in 2022 is still not the best option. It costs the team $15.5 million in dead cap, which is a lot, and only saves $3.76 million in cap space. So again, not something that most teams would consider doing. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Post June 1st cut, however, does bring it to a reasonable number. So the team would be on the hook for $7.75 million dead cap in 2022, but they would save $11.5 million in cap savings. And the reason for that is Julio's entire base salary, outside of the $2 million that will probably become guaranteed at some point in 2021, is not guaranteed. So they could save all of that money by cutting him before the season. So that is something to keep an eye on if Julio has another injury-plagued season in 2021. The trade numbers, for reference, are exactly the same as the cut numbers. They're probably a little bit more favorable, however, like I said, due to that $2 million guaranteed base salary that kicks in 2021. That guarantee would get traded to the team that is trading for him, and the Falcons wouldn't be on the hook for that. So a trade in 2022, particularly if Julio has a really strong season in 2021, a bounce back year under a new offensive coordinator, manages to stay healthy, that scenario becomes a lot more likely to happen in 2022. 2023, it's very similar to 2022 because of the structure of the contract. So whether it's a cut or a trade or whatever, it's $7.75 million dead cap, $11.5 million cap savings. The numbers are going to be the same no matter what, whether it's a cut or a trade, because this is the final year of the contract. There's no post-June 1st shenanigans. There's no prorated bonuses, none of that, because this is the final year. Now, it's unlikely that we get to this point of the deal because Julio is going to want an extension if he's playing well, and the Falcons will probably have moved on or will be making him play out this final year if he hasn't been performing to the way that both sides like. So actually getting to the 2023 portion of this deal without some sort of extension or cut or trade is probably unlikely, but for reference, those are the numbers there. One additional scenario that we haven't touched on is the possibility of the Falcons restructuring Julio Jones's contract. So if they do go that route, this would be the opposite of a cut, right? So when you restructure, generally the way most teams do a restructure is you'll convert non-guaranteed base salary into a signing bonus. So the player will get this money immediately. They're happy about it because it technically becomes guaranteed because they have it right in their hand and they get it immediately. And this will shift some of that money into some of that cap hit from base salary into future years, like a signing bonus. So in 2021, for instance, the Falcons could restructure and save up to $9.48 million in cap space, which is significant, particularly in a year where we might be looking at a reduced cap. And in 2022, they could restructure and free up as much as $5.19 million. Both of these could come into play. Julio is a franchise icon. A new staff GM might decide that they just don't really want to move on from him. They're comfortable just kind of eating this 2021 year, which they don't really have a choice about. And then his cap hits are relatively reasonable over the final few years, so it's not that big a deal. They could easily take this cap space and use it to make other moves. But the downside of a restructure is that it shifts that base salary into a prorated signing bonus, which means that Julio will be very difficult to cut or trade over the remaining years of the contract. So if they were to pull off these restructures, especially if they go towards the higher end of these restructures, he's going to be very difficult to trade or cut favorably in 2022 and 2023. So it's probably taking most of those options we've just discussed off the table, but it could free up this cap space immediately. The Falcons could keep Julio Jones around over the length of this contract. Maybe that's the best deal for both sides, but we will see how that goes and if the team decides to do that. So to summarize here, Julio's not going anywhere in 2021. The team doesn't really have any methods or any reasonable moves they can take to get Julio either traded or cut this year. And frankly, coming off an injury, it's probably something that would be looked upon quite poorly by the player and the franchise. And I just don't think anyone's trying to make that sort of move this year for a variety of reasons. 2022, however, things are more possible. The post-June 1st cut is a possibility, something that could make financial sense if Julio continues to struggle with injuries and the team really needs that cap space. A trade, if it's the opposite and Julio has a great season and the team is trying to do a full rebuild and start fresh, that post-June 1st trade also, or either sort of trade scenario in 2022 might make a lot of sense if the Falcons can get some sort of premium draft capital like a day 2 pick for Julio in addition to moving on from that contract. So that 2022, like with Matt Ryan, is when some of these moves start to become feasible. 2023 is the same way, except even more favorable. It's the final year of the deal. It's very easy to maneuver out of, but it's the final year of the deal. There are no further guarantees. Julio's not really going to be happy playing on that deal, assuming he's still having good seasons. So he's going to want an extension before that year comes to pass, or he's probably going to be out of here. That's also his age 34 season. So you're getting into the sort of time where you're trying to figure out how is this guy going to finish his career? Do we want to give him some sort of reasonable deal to stick around, or do we want to let him leave? Do we want to try to flip him for some sort of resources? At that point, the team is going to be having those more long-term discussions and probably not looking to save a few bucks in cap space with some cuts and things like that. And also we touched on the restructures. Those could be the opposite of what we've been talking about, which is you could free up space in 2021, 2022, and you're basically tying yourself to Julio over the length of the deal. You're giving him more guarantees, more prorated bonuses, and saying we're going to stick with you over the course of this deal, and we'll reevaluate in 2023. So those are the options that are on the table for the Falcons. As you can see, 2021 is not an option, so please stop adding me asking those questions. Thank you. Well, there you have it, folks. Julio Jones contract explained. I hope this clears up some of the confusion folks were having regarding his contract and regarding the options the Falcons have for moving on from Jones or for keeping Jones, restructuring him, whatever. I hope this has been exhaustive and answered all of your questions, but as always, if you have further questions, put those in the comments. Guys, also want to wish everyone a happy new year. I think this video will be publishing on January 1st, so happy new year to everyone. Let's hope 2021 is a better year for the world and also please for the Falcons. Thank you very much. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Both of those things help us out in a big way. We really appreciate that. If you're interested in the Patreon page, if you want to have input on what sort of videos we're going to be running, what sort of prospects we're going to be taking a look at during draft season, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/falcoholiclive. We really appreciate all that support from you guys. And also want to encourage people to check out our live shows. We're going to be having our final post-game show of the season on Sunday, for the final game against the Buccaneers, but we will also be doing Wednesday shows at 8:10 p.m. Eastern every single week during the offseason, at least up until the draft. So if you're looking for that sweet, sweet offseason content, free agency, draft, all the head coaching and general manager rumors, that is the place to be. It's a lot of fun. We answer a lot of viewer questions live. So please check that out, guys. In the meantime, I'm Kevin Knight, @Kevin on Twitter. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a good one, guys.